Welcome back. MultiChoice's recent removal of Russia Today from DSTV has sparked a debate around censorship. The removal of the news channel came days after Russia invaded Ukraine. The ANC believes it was done in bad faith and undermines subscribers' freedom. It says MultiChoice's reasons for the removal are quite bizarre and lack legal justification. The ANC is calling on MultiChoice to reconsider its decision and immediately reinstate Russia Today. For the sake of completion, it is worth recording that the side from MultiChoice, their story is that the feed was cut by the global supplier, not only to them, to other providers of satellite services. Just for completion, that's their side of the story. Moving on, Russian forces are continuing to shell Mariupol in Ukraine despite a ceasefire agreement. A green corridor was set up to allow citizens to evacuate two cities. But just hours after it was due to start, authorities in Mariupol cancelled a mass evacuation. Russia has besieged the port city, cutting off electricity, food, water and heating in the midst of winter. Russia has not commented on the continued attack, but accused Ukrainian authorities of preventing people from leaving. A final assault is expected on Mariupol, which will allow Russian forces to move north. Meanwhile, a third round of peace talks is expected to take place this weekend. Another take on that ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Russia's military invasion of Ukraine started some 10 days ago, and now it's increasing cyber attacks on the former Soviet state. Experts are concerned it may lead to a global cyber war. To help us understand the threat, I'm joined now by cybersecurity expert at KnowBe4 Africa, and that's Anna Collard. Anna, good afternoon. Thank you for joining me. So, do we have a sense of this shifting gears from not just being a conflict on the ground, in the skies and in the seas, but actually in the cyberspace, from just scanning the environment? Are we sensing that this is what's happening?
Yes, thanks for having me. So this has been happening for years. So already we've seen cyber attacks happening from Russia launched against other countries, including Ukraine, since like the beginning of the 2000s, really. The most prominent one, I think you may still remember, was in 2016, called NotPetya, that had massive collateral damages in the rest of the world, where they used a piece of malware, a so-called masquerading ransomware that was purely meant to destroy Ukrainian organizations that, however, then also infected companies like Maersk, also even local companies that were impacted by that and had to fight with downtime and sort of infections on their network. In terms of what we've seen now, obviously just before the invasion, there were two new malware strains that were detected, so-called wipers, which are, again, they look like ransomware or extortion attack, but they're purely made not for economic gain, but just with the purpose to destroy. So far, from what we've seen, is that these malware strains are not any more sophisticated than other or existing malware. So from a surrounding, like if you're not particularly involved with organizations in the Ukraine, or you have subsidiaries in the Ukraine, then obviously the alert level should go up, but it's not particularly scary in terms of protecting against those malware pieces. And it's something that's been going on for years. It hasn't just started now with the invasion.
So, Anna, to the extent that we believe that there's an escalation in the cyber attacks, are we reading it as being linked to the sanctions that the West and NATO countries have imposed on Russia as some kind of retaliation that says, if you are crippling our economy and our systems through the sanctions, we will cripple yours through, cyber attacks?
Yeah, I think that threat definitely does exist. What has been quite interesting is that both sides, both the Ukraine, and this is the first time I think that we've seen something like that happening, as well as the Russian cybercrime groups are now fighting against each other, in particular, even in cases where they may have collaborated before, like the ransomware gangs is a good example. We had a massive attack against a very popular or prominent ransomware group called Conti last week that resulted in massive leaks about how they operate, who they communicate with. There was allegedly a Ukrainian researcher who got onto that network. What is happening as well is that Ukraine has publicly asked for help. So they're asking for other cyber security researchers and activists to help them fight back. But at the same time, we're also seeing cybercrime groups that are on the Russian side fighting the fight. In terms of the impact so far, it's been a little bit surprising even that we haven't seen more sort of attacks against critical infrastructure like we've seen before a few years ago, where Russia had attacked Ukrainian power plants and basically removed electricity in the middle of winter from thousands of people. That hasn't happened yet, perhaps because the Ukrainian defense, from a cyber point of view, has been used, they've been used to these types of attacks, or perhaps because maybe it's still coming. So we don't know. We don't know at this point. Yeah.
Anna, I'm running out of time, but sitting here, if I said to you, we are not hostile towards Russia, and I think the last 2 weeks have shown that as South Africa, we are anything but hostile to Russia, and let alone being hostile, we can't even call them out on anything. We tiptoe around Russia. So why should we be worried as South Africa about this? This, if it becomes a fully fledged cyber war of sabotage, it will be between Russia, the United States, NATO countries, the EU, etc., etc. And like we did with the vote in the UN General Assembly, we can sit this one out. Would I be naive to say that?
So yes, I don't think we have to expect any sort of conscious attacks against our organizations by Russian military or Russian cyber groups per se. However, what happens when these nation states fight each other, they develop malware or malicious software or attacks that can leak outside of the targeted environment. And then if your environment is vulnerable to those particular exploits, then you may be collateral damage. So it's not necessarily that we are targeted, but if your environment is not safe, or not adequately patched or updated, then we can still fall prey to these types of attacks.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights, Anna Collard, who is cybersecurity expert at KnowBe4 Africa. And we all know what the cyber attacks can do. Remember the one on the Justice Department? Remember the one that forced Transnet to declare force majeure? So these are real issues that are out in the environment, in the cyber environment.